Well, good morning. My name is John Hansman, and I'm here with my friend Emilio, and this is the Business and Bites podcast, episode 9. It's crazy. We're 9 episodes in.
Episode 9.
Episode 9. We're almost to double digits, which I think is super, super exciting. We have a fun guest today, somebody that I've known from Toastmasters primarily, who also works locally here with the Economic Development Council, or the EDC. I'm going to say EDC a lot. So just know when I say EDC, it's Economic Development Council. And so we're just going to bring George right in and introduce him and just jump right into this interview because I'm super excited. And I want to make sure we've got lots of time to chat and get to know George a little bit. Mr. George Sharp.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great today.
Oh, I'm excited, even though the weather is kind of gloomy here in Western Washington. Emilio's in Florida, so
I don't want to brag. I don't want to brag.
It's always sunny in Florida.
It was cold today. It was like 66 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, George, thanks for doing this with us, and I'm super excited to have you. I think the way I want to get started is I really want to just get to know a little bit of your story about. So you currently work for the Thurston County Economic Development Council.
Correct.
And you specifically work with rural cities that are under certain population to help them kind of increase tourism and bring people into their towns, which I think is super awesome. I think that's got to be a lot of fun. I'd love to hear how did you get, what was your career like? How did you get to work for the Economic Development Council?
Yeah, well, it started a long time ago when I was in high school. I was in FFA and I became in agriculture. I raised 30 heads of livestock for cows. Then I got into pigs and sheep, and FFA actually built picnic tables and sold them. So I became kind of entrepreneurial in high school. And then I went to WSU in 1981 to go to school, and first semester, I got a 1.64 GPA. So the second semester, I dropped out. But my mom was interested in living in Pullman because my sister was going to vet school there. So she actually bought a motel, Cougarland Motel, a 42-room motel. And so I became her maintenance guy and her marketing person in doing that. And then in 1982, I decided to open up a restaurant. So I opened up Cougar Cafe in downtown, had about 42 seats. I took a business that was doing about $200 a day in revenue. I closed it down. I opened a new business under Cougar Cafe name. I remodeled the whole area, and within 6 weeks, we were doing $650 a day in 1982.
Wow.
But I was working from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., and then I was the wake-up guy. If you're locked yourself out of your motel, that was where you'd push a button and you'd wake me up. And so after about 6 months, I was just worn out. And so I wanted to sell the motel, but we couldn't get that sold right away. So I sold my restaurant instead. So I did that. So then I worked at the motel, and I took 2 classes a semester all that time at WSU going on. And then 1988, my mom passed away. So I asked my wife, would you like to get married? We still had the motel running it, but we opened up what is called a balloon store. It was called Balloons, Etc. And the fun thing that we did with that was we did gorillograms. And so I was a gorilla, a chicken, a monster, a teddy bear, and we would go out and go in being a university town. The parents would call us and say, hey, we want you to go do a gorillagram to our kid. And so we create what was called a poop sheet on them. And we had a Max SE, one of the first people to buy a Max SE back then. And we create this poop sheet, and then we go deliver it to these people. And we say, hey, by the way, your mom wants you to know that your brother and his friends was watching you sunbathe topless, and it's just shock factor to these kids. And we'd also go to hospitals and do that. So we did that for 18 months and lost $45,000 and went broke. And so I had been kind of the cheerleader for Pullman anyway, and the Chamber of Commerce had an opening for the Visitor and Convention Bureau Director. And in March 1990, I was hired to be the Visitor and Convention Bureau Director, and I did that for 4 years. And then the executive director resigned, and so I applied for the executive director of the Pullman Chamber of Commerce, and I got that job. And so I did that for another 4 years. One of the jobs I immediately got in March of 1990 was become the executive director of the National Lentil Festival. And if you can promote lentils, you can promote anything. And so I did that for 8 years, won lots of international awards for the marketing that we did for that group. But in 1989, we decided to leave Pullman. And I went to work for the Bellingham Chamber of Commerce for 1 year as a marketing and membership director, and also supported the Ski to Sea Festival. I really miss tourism. That's what my love is tourism development. And so I called the state tourism director and said, hey, I'm going to be looking for a tourism related job. Would be my reference for me again? And she says, well, by the way, I have a new position opening up. It's called the Rural Tourism Development Manager, and I'd like to encourage you to apply. So I applied, and I think there was 2 final candidates, and then I was selected to be that person. So I became that person, and the year 2000 is kind of when it kicked it off. I did lots of different fun things. I created a great idea grant program, $100,000 grant, $10,000 at a time that a community could apply for, and implemented that. And then I worked in almost every one of the really small communities across Washington State. My job was to go out there, meet with them, and talk to them about how to do tourism attractions. So either through product development, creating something that some people come see and do, or through public relations, with getting in the media, et cetera, or with marketing. And so over that time, I got a lot of experience in doing that. But in 2011, my position was cut when the budget hit Washington State. And so I needed to find another job. So I went to work for the Visitor and Convention Bureau, and I did that until 2015. And loved that job in promoting Thurston County. And then I branched out to do my own consulting. I got a couple of good jobs for the first about 15 months, where I grossed about $100,000 with contracts with other economic development councils. I did a lot of roundtables for them to talk to their business community and say, and so I did that in Mason County mostly, but had other ones. I helped Adams County, which is a small county where Ritzville and Othello are. I helped write their strategic plan and that. And so I did that for two years. And then my contract's dried up, and my wife said, January, you don't have a job, you gotta find a job. And so I found a small job with the Economic Development Council doing grant administration for a brand new veterans program that the city of Lacey implemented. And so I did that for a little while. And then January of 2017, I went to work for what was called PTAC then, Washington PTAC, which is a program of the Thurston EDC. And that's helping small businesses get contracts with governments, with city, county, state, federal, and then large contractors. So I did that and started that in January 17. And then June of 2017, a position opened up a half-time to be the rural program manager. And so I kept my PTAC job and then added my rural program manager. And that's where I started to serve these 6 rural communities, anywhere from 500 population to about 10,000 population. And that's how I got my job in the EDC. And so I've really taken what was called our South Thurston Economic Development Initiative. We call it STEADY for short. From where it was there to now, we have 45 people in the room. We have 4 congressional staff members attending. We have an elected official from each city. Normally the 3 to 5 county commissioners attend that meeting. Then I have 8 other partner organizations that serve those communities. We meet on a monthly basis on the 3rd Friday of every month. And we talk about community and economic development best practices, but also lessons learned. So we want to share, how did you fund what you just did, or what are the things you did? But also, is there something that you did that we want to make sure no other community ever does that, because it was a really bad experience too. So it's a combination of things that we can share with them. So, and that's in a nutshell what I do. Part of the contract that the EDC has, we have a contract with the city of Tenino that we do community and economic development for them. And until this last year in November, I was their creative district manager. And so I helped them create a creative district starting in 2018, went through an 18-month process to bring all the information together. We applied to the Washington State Arts Commission to become certified, and then that is what focused on the creative economy in Tenino area. We also have a contract with the Tenino Area Chamber of Commerce for me to serve as a staff member, because they're a small membership organization, less than 100 members, so they don't have money to pay a full-time real staff member plus benefits and everything else. So they contract with us. We also have a contract with the Grand Mountain Rochester Chamber, and I serve as a support staff member to them. And then I'm an advisor to We Love Rainier, which is like a Chamber of Commerce in Rainier, Washington. And then I support staff to advisor to a lot of the festivals that are in those small communities. And then I also work with the town of Bucota to help create what's called Bucota Spectacular. So that's kind of in a nutshell the stuff I do at the area.
You have a lot going on. So one of the so obviously bringing more people into these small towns is a benefit to the town itself. How does that directly impact, like you're working on increasing tourism to these towns? How does that directly impact businesses? Is there an impact you've seen?
Yeah, well, I'll go back to what the EDC's role is, which is to retain jobs currently. So our goal is to keep jobs that are there, and that helps in the communities I'm working with, because we're bringing outside money that comes into the community. They buy things like food and lodging and those things, and leave their money there. They go to shops and buy things, etc., and then they leave. But it helps those jobs and businesses stay in business. And for example of that is Joe's Place, which is a 127-year-old tavern in downtown Bucota, which has two businesses in downtown, a mini grocery store and Joe's Place. And Joe's Place told me that this last October, they had the biggest Saturday they'd ever had in the history, and they had the biggest month of October they'd ever had in history. And that's because we brought thousands of people to Bucota every weekend. Between the first weekend, we had what was called the Family Fun Day. The second weekend, we did hearse procession and viewing. A hearse procession is like a hearse parade, and viewing is like a car show. Then the third weekend, which is my baby and my favorite thing to do, is we do casket races. And so people build fake caskets and then they race them down the street. And we had the year before, we had like 6 caskets. And this last year, we had 18 caskets participate. My ultimate goal is to have 71 caskets, because Manitou Springs, Colorado, where I stole the idea from, and they think they're in their 30th or 31st year, they limit it to 70 caskets. So I'm going to have the world's largest casket race someday with 71 caskets. And so that's the goal with them. In Tenino, we've done something called the Arts Market. So we did a holiday. When 2020 hit and we had COVID in November and December, all of our artisans who normally go to festival events hadn't been able to go to one for the whole year. So we created what was a Tenino holiday market. We did it for 6 weekends, and we generated over $100,000 and some for the artisans. How we had to do it, though, is because the rules were you weren't allowed to still have a retail location for small. And especially you weren't supposed to be in a meeting space, which we were in a meeting space. But we let the vendors come set up their booths, and then they went away, and we staffed it as the Chamber of Commerce and Tenino Arts, a nonprofit partner of the Chamber. And the visitors came in, and they purchased the items. And then at night, the artisans would come back and restock their booths. So we did that for Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 6 weekends in a row. And that was super successful. So, but it dang near killed us, because it was mostly volunteers I was working with to be the cashiers. And so we said, let's do it again in the spring of 2021. So we did it in the spring of 2021 for 3 days, and it was very successful, grossed over $50,000. And so then we did it again for the next, and we moved it to just Thanksgiving weekend. So Thanksgiving weekend 2021, we did it, 2022 and 2023. And it's just been phenomenal. We had 52 artisans apply for the one that's coming up on St. Patrick's Day weekend this year. We select 32 because that's the space we can fit in downtown Tenino at a building called the Kodiak meeting room. So, and that's been phenomenal to help support those artisans. But the better bonus of that is we attracted over 2,500 people to Tenino each one of those weekends. And the cafe there, Sandstone Cafe, was normally never biggest weekend, was always like Oregon Trail Days and Mother's Day and stuff. This artisan market blows that out of the water with how busy they are all 3 days. And We have people lining up. When we open on Friday, we have about 50 people in line at 10 a.m. waiting to get into our meeting space where we're selling. They've all gone to Sandstone Cafe before that. So it's been a great boost for them. The lady across the street from them, who is Ironworks Boutique, she's been in business for 13 years this year. This year, she normally does $500 on a weekend. This year, she did $2,000 on those art weekends. So yeah, it's bringing people to town, and they're spending the money in the community.
That's really great. And I assume, because some of these places aren't really that far. Like Tenino is 15 minutes from where I live.
Right.
So for me to hop into Tenino, if I really like a place, in fact, some friends and I go to Sandstone every 3 months. Some old friends of mine, I used to do lunch with at my old job. So every 3 months we go at that cafe and have lunch. And so it's one of those things. If you know that they exist, you have an opportunity to go visit those places more. And I think if you don't know they exist because you've never been there, how are you gonna find these businesses?
You find them, which is the cool part, and then they come back, repeat customers.
That's really great.
So you're basically marketing to the humans, right? So we're the leads, right? Pretty much. How do I get people that don't know anything about my city or my town or my county here to participate? So for a business owner, it'd be, how do I get, my XYZ customer base to learn more about my business? So same concept, just different endpoints per se.
Yeah.
Well, what I like to call it is we're trying to put butts in seats, and it'll be nice about how I say that. Yeah. Anyway, butts in seat, and then we like to put feet on the street to make the cash register ring, and that's the goal. If you can't get feet on the street, you're not going to make your cash register ring, and so communities that you're talking to and business owners, they need to figure out who's doing what in their community to market the community to bring more people in.
Right. So you're doing a lot of role. The economic development councils around the country have a huge role. And I know you talked a little bit about helping veterans. What other things can business owners use local economic development councils for?
Yeah, so our economic development council is probably one of the larger ones in Washington State. We have about 33 employees. Most economic councils probably have between 3 and 11 employees. And we've just grown. Michael Cade, who's our executive director, started in 2004 with 1.5 employees and one or two programs. And everybody's goal is to retain jobs, then to expand jobs, which is helping those businesses you already have figure out how to expand their jobs, and then recruit businesses into your community as well. And we have several different programs that we do that. So we have the Washington Center Women in Business, who's underneath the EDC, is one of they work in 34 counties, and they do startup business and help them. So they'll do, we have several different programs. One's called the BEST program. That's an online training program people can connect into, but they also serve as coaches to all these businesses and work them through how do you create a business plan, and then in your business plan, what do you need to have in your business plan? And they talk about marketing and human resources, all those kind of things. So that's one of the programs. I talked about Washington PTAC. That's not called Apex, which they help train businesses to get government contracts. And that's one way to expand your business. Once you got your business up and running, you got your standard operating procedures, you know who your target customer is, you know what your product is, then you might say, hey, how do we expand that? And it's one way is to get government contracts with cities, counties, states, ports, those kind of people. And we take them through baby steps, like get a small contract, prove it. Because in the federal government, they want proof that you know how you're doing and that you've had successful contracts before you. So we help them get small ones, and then the ladder up till they get bigger ones than that. We have what's called the Center for Business and Innovation, which kind of oversees these programs. So we have all these programs that are tied to that, and they are the ones who also have consultants and coaches that coach business through that. And we do define different programs. One of the programs we created was called Scale Up, and that's how to take your business from level A to level B, from like $150,000 to $300,000 in gross and up. And the State Department of Commerce here liked it so much that they actually took that from us and contract with us now to implement that statewide. And so it's about a $1,500 value to go through that 6-week course. And anybody in Washington State can take that course. and we rotate it. We normally have 3 classes every 3 months that people can participate in that. And so people in Washington, they can just look up Scale Up Washington, and they'll find where they can apply for that. Then we actually work with each city to create what's called a business tune-up. So Olympia, we created one which was specific for how do you do business in Olympia and all the things you need to do. We did that for Tumwater, and we did that for Lacey. And now I'm getting ready to work and applying for a grant. So I do that with all my steady communities. It'll be called Steady Tune-Up. And that's another part of the program that we do. So out there across the state, across the United States, there's normally a state association of an economic development association. You can find their website, then they'll have a link. Or you just go into your community and ask. There's sometimes the Chamber of Commerce are combined, like in Grace Harbor, it's combined as a chamber in EDC. In Spokane, it's there. And so just find out who's doing economic development activities in your community. On top of that, there's also the SBA, Small Business Administration. They fund our Washington Center program. They also fund the Small Business Development Centers, and every state has a Small Business Development Center too. Ours is run through Washington State University, but they have like 22 locations across Washington State, and that's another person who's a resource for you, and they can provide business coaching for you and training as well. And they're part of our Center for Business Innovation with us they're located in the South Puget Sound Community College with us. So a lot of times they're located in college locations or in it with it combined with the chamber or EDC.
I think I know personally 5 people who've gone through startup, and every single one of them has grown their business exponentially, and they'd swear go do it for sure.
Yeah. The average right now is about 30% growth after you've gone through the Scale Up program.
Wow, that's great. So I've got that on the screen here for anybody who's interested to go check that out if you're in Washington State. I'm assuming other states have similar things. I believe so. The basics for someone who's a business owner, maybe they're at the very start, or maybe they're in the middle and they're just struggling. Most economic development councils have at least some free counseling to help, people create a business plan, for example, and things like that. Is that
correct?
Pretty cool?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's correct.
So I would say, especially if anybody's watching and they're newer to business, or you're struggling, or you don't know how to grow your business, I think getting with your local economic development council is a really great way to get started. I know I sat in and did some counseling when I first got started, just to get my head around what am I doing and have some goals and some ways to know my budgeting and all of that. And it's fascinating how many people just don't even know their numbers. And I sat down and went and got some help from the EDC here to get started when I was first starting out.
That was our largest aha moment in 2020 when we put $13 million of grants out the door to businesses that most of them didn't know their numbers. Mm-hmm. And so out of that, we created a program where we actually teach people how to use QuickBooks and what QuickBooks does for you, and then what does those numbers mean to you. And that's been a life changer for some of them that stayed in business. People who didn't know their numbers and didn't figure out their numbers, most of those are no longer in business that went through the COVID.
I know I was fortunate enough to get grant money from, I think it was City of Lacey, from their grant. They asked for a lot of things, and we had it. And part of that was I'd already sat down and was using QuickBooks from day one. That was like my first thing I did when I started a business. And I said, I have a business, as I got QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And so I can go all the way back and look at what we've done, which is pretty fun. So your primary, so we talked a little bit about your primary job there at the EDC. We've covered kind of what the EDC does. Is there anything else that somebody would want to know about the economic development councils around the country and how, what they can be used for that we didn't cover?
Well, one of the things in what we do is we actually have a research department too that can work with the business and say, okay, who's your target customer? Where are they coming from? And then what are the market research and demographics should you be aware of or could find out? We also help identify what are gaps in communities. So maybe a community needs to have a bakery. Well, we can go through the research and say, a bakery would work there or wouldn't work there. to based on averages, right? So yeah. So the big thing is go visit with them and say, what does your organization do that can help my business succeed? That's the key.
Yeah, I know there's one on each side. I've also done work over in Eastern Washington, and they've got one as well. So I think anyone in any state should be able to go look for an economic development council and at least go ask some questions, because I feel like they also know the market. They also know who their businesses are in the city. They know a lot of information. They know who all the chambers are, all of those things. So they're probably, if you're going to start a business in a city, they're probably the first people you should talk to. Would be my recommendation.
Also, we can be advocates for business, and when there's permitting and those kind of things, tell them at least the process that they have to go through to be able to establish their business. And then I'd also encourage them to get involved with their local chamber of commerce too, because the chamber is normally this networking opportunity. We don't do networking a lot. We do more of the business coaching, etc. But your local chamber of commerce is a great way to get involved in your community as well, and then meet other people through the networking opportunities. Make sure you take time to go to their chamber lunches and their after hours. That's where you're going to meet other people and make a connection and possibly find another new customer.
Yeah, that's true. I spent a lot of time with chambers, and I think you're right. You think about chamber of commerce as a great way. They do a lot of advocacy, but then they also offer ways to meet other owners, other potential clients. And this Thurston, these EDCs are really great tools to help people get on their feet and understand how to run a business. I think we see this in our industry a lot, right, Emilio? Like tons of really techie people who don't know how to run businesses.
Yeah, it's also though the communication of it. Just like right now, this is the first time I'm being educated on EDCs right now. Just listening to George and you discuss it. Like how do we get that in front of the business owners or the people that want to start businesses so that they know where to go, that they have resources, that they have somebody that can coach them through the basics at the very least. I feel like that information isn't basic knowledge when I feel it should be.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think that us talking, maybe you think EDCs are referral. I mean, like you have a website and you're out in the community, but there's a ton of businesses that are failing right now that could sit down and get a free counseling session that could turn their business around.
Yeah, we need to get the word out more. I mean, I've called us the Rodney Dangerfield of economic development because nobody knows who we are, and
right,
you get no respect and that kind of stuff. Most people don't know who we are and what we do, and
right.
until it's almost too late, and then they freak out, and then they're trying to find every resource available. Well, when you start your business, go to the resource right now that can help you think about your business plan and work through it. And they know the questions to ask you that you don't even know what you should be asking yourself yet because you're starting your business. So.
Yeah, I think that's the first. I really do agree. If you're thinking about starting a business or you should look up your local economic development council and start the counseling process immediately, because then you can just avoid pitfalls. Wouldn't it be nice to avoid all those struggles at the very beginning and not have to go through the struggle? It's business. There's still going to be struggle.
That'd be no fun.
Yeah.
One of the things we're working on is to make sure that all of our cities, if somebody goes to get a business permit to open up in a city, that they say, hey, have you talked to your economic development council? Ooh. Or do you know about your economic development council, because they're a great resource for you as you get your business up and running. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, George, I want to pivot a little bit more towards personal. One of the things, one of my, other than knowing you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to helping small businesses and working with cities, and all of that is really fascinating. But the main reason that having you on this show, I think, is important is I want to talk about your positive mindset. And nothing shows positive mindset like watching somebody walk through trials. because when we go through things, we have two choices on how we go through those things. We can either struggle through them and complain a lot, or we can have a really positive mindset about the possibilities. And so I know you're waiting for a kidney currently,
right?
And so can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got there, as much as you're willing, and then we'll talk a little bit about how the mindset works for you.
Yeah, well, my journey started probably back in May of 1997 when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I started with using pills for that. And then about 10 years later, I started using insulin. And so, big message to anybody who has type 1 or type 2 diabetes, that I never really was told that the long term, you're probably going to have kidney failure at some point in your life. So manage your type 2 diabetes the best you can with medicine, but also with exercise. And what I didn't really pay attention to or realize was the food that you eat and how important that is. And so fast forward to 2020, February 2020, I got high blood pressure. And those two combined are the most reason for kidney failure is type 2 diabetes and kidney failure. And so my kidneys started to decline. I was they have what's called the GFR, which rates your kidney percentage from 1 to 100. 100 would be your kidneys functioning full, etc. At that time, and I'm a little upset because nobody told me before then, this is what your numbers are doing. But my number at that time was 30. And so I got serious about it. But in the next, like a month later, it dropped down to 27. Then it dropped down to 24. And then once you hit 20, that's when you're eligible to apply to be on the national transplant list. And so I did that somewhere probably in June or July of that year. And so then you start that process. And that's a long process to go through with all the tests that they do and things, just to make sure that your quality body could take a kidney and be successful in holding that. So I hired a nutritionalist then, $5,400 to do a whole food plant-based diet. She had a system where she has like 6,000 different recipes I could choose from. And then every week we met and talked about it and what successes I had and where I was struggling with. She helped with my mentalness of, being positive towards, and that this is one way to stave off. So in 2020, February, my nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor, told me, you're going to be on dialysis in like 4 months the way you're going. And so I was able to use whole food plant-based diet and stave that off for 2.5 more years before in April of 2023, actually in January 2023, I spent a week in the hospital, got sicker and sicker. My GFR dropped down to, I think I went like from 24 down to 17. Then I was stable for 17 for a long time. And then by then in January 2023, it dropped down to like 6 and 7. And when you get that low, that's when they want to put you on dialysis. And so I ended up starting dialysis on April 19th, 2023, where they put a catheter in your neck, which you can see right there. Thing goes into my neck, and that hooks you up to a machine that circulates your blood through it and cleans your blood and also takes water off of you. And so I did that until May 25th. In the May 25th, I did what was called peritoneal dialysis, where you actually have a surgery and they stick a tube into your stomach. And instead, they put a solution into your stomach, into your area there. And that's supposed to clean your blood and also take water off. And so I was able to do that at home for 8 hours. Every night I hook up and I stay on that machine for 8 hours and then I get off. But I'm 1% that peritoneal dialysis doesn't work for. It would never take the water off my body. I gained 35 pounds. My legs got up, I look like an elephant. It was just miserable. And finally in September, so I started in May, finally in September, after trying all these different solutions and things, I said, I give up. I want to go back to what's called in-center dialysis, where you hook up to a machine, someplace people hook you up, etc., and do that. And so I did that, and I did that in September 15th. I went and got a catheter put back in. They'd start with a catheter in you to immediately be able to give you dialysis, and then they put something in your arm called a fistula. That long-term, that's where they put the needles in to draw the blood out of you. So within 2 weeks, I got a bad staph infection. It made me extremely sick. I was like a zombie the first 4 days of this staph infection. I spent 11 days in the hospital for that. And so it's been as you know, it's been this roller coaster ride, dialysis, etc. I did get listed in September 21st on the transplant list. And within like a month, I got a call from South Carolina at 5:30 in the morning, say, "Hey, you're number 2 on the list today. Don't drink anything, don't eat anything, and we'll call you back at 10:30 and let you know if you need to come up." And I'm registered with the University of Washington. Across the state, across the nation, there's 2 or 3 transplant centers in every state. We have 2 in the Seattle area, 1 in Spokane. And so you're registered with those people. And I was waiting for a cadaver kidney, which is a person who dies in a car wreck or a heart attack or something, that you have access to that. But I also was trying to get a living donor, because a living donor kidney lasts twice as long normally as a cadaver kidney lasts. So anyway, they called and said, "Hey, the other guy matched and he went in front of you." So I'd never heard back from them forever. And so I had another roller coaster ride. I had somebody call me in early December, said, "Hey, my nephew's going to die, and we want to make sure you could get his kidney." So they said, I called the University of Washington immediately. They said, have the hospital there, have the family tell the hospital and a place called Life Center Northwest that they want to do a direct donation to you, the kidney. And so I didn't hear anything. That was on a Monday. So on Tuesday, they did an MRI and declared the person brain dead. On Wednesday, they started the process of the kidney. Well, all organs that he was going to give all his organs. Like, it's amazing how many people get taken care of. And so I didn't hear anything on Thursday when I thought that process would start. Say, hey, you might be a match, because it's a long process to figure out if you're matched too, with blood and size of kidney and person and that kind of stuff. And so I didn't hear anything until Monday. I still hadn't heard anything. So I reached out to University of Washington and said, well, we've never heard it from the hospital or Life Center Northwest. I reached out to my friend, reached out to the family. The family says, Life Center Northwest says, because the person was on the National Register, they are not allowed to direct donate to you. Man, I blew up. That's just wrong. And so I called the Life Center North. They said that's a state law that they're not allowed to do that. So I'm gonna next legislative session advocate for changing that. But so I've had probably 10 people try to give me a kidney, and they get disqualified from BMI being too high, their age. Like Gary Edwards from county commissioner tried to give me a kidney. Well, he's 77, so he's past the 70 age limit that University of Washington has. Fortunately, I had one person find out that they had cancer, but they found out early, so they're still alive, thank God. And that was in 2020. Like, people are trying to give me a kidney.
Oh, you had somebody find out they had cancer because of trying to give you a kidney?
Because all the tests they have to take. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that saves his life. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so I'm hoping that I'm feeling that I'm gonna get a living donor this year in 2023 or a cadaver, because I've been on the list for 3.5 years. The University of Washington says their list is 3 to 5 years long for cadaver kidneys to get one. There's over 125,000 people on the transplant list for kidneys, and about 30,000 operations take place every year. So there's this big, and people die on dialysis, and University of Washington says the average is after they go on dialysis, they last 5 years. And that's why it's so important for me to get either cadaver or a living kidney so I can expand my life.
Living kidney means they take part of a kidney?
They actually take a kidney. So you have 2 kidneys in you, and you
okay.
can function on just one. And so a living donor will donate a kidney to me, and that kidney will be put into my body. And they leave my kidneys I had. I didn't understand that either. They leave the kidneys in your body in there unless they're diseased beyond why you should keep it. So that's the process I went through with this kidney process. And so but yeah, some days it sucks to get out of bed. And my thing goes all the way back to high school, when I had the great FFA teacher and taught me positive mental attitude, and that we have choices every day. When we get up, we can make a choice, or we're going to have a good day or a bad day. And when something happens to you, and I had a great example of that on Friday, where I had hit a curb in the snow and blew out my tire, and I was getting ready to go right into my steady meeting, and I could say, wow, man, I could let that ruin my day, or I could say, thank God I'm still alive. And that's why I thank God every day I'm still alive when I wake up. And that's how I start my day. And then I end my day with gratitude of what am I thankful for that happened today, and the people in my life, and the, even though I'm sick and exhausted a lot. I still have a pretty good life, and I'm doing what I love. And when you can do what you love and make an impact, and hopefully I'm making a difference for these rural communities, that keeps me alive and going and motivated versus being down in the dumps and that. So,
yeah, gotta stay positive.
Yeah. How, so you go through, obviously you go through days, you're still going through dialysis now. You have to, right?
I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm at the dialysis center by 5, and I go there, and it takes about 15 minutes to 20 to get me hooked up to the machine. And then I do it for 4 hours, and then they disconnect me, and that takes another 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm done around 10:30 a.m., and that's Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays.
Tuesdays, okay, so 3 days a week. Okay. Yeah, and so do you feel like over this time, since you this really became evident that it was going to, you especially getting on dialysis, do you feel like you had to develop a positive mindset in this, or to like coach yourself, or do you feel like just past experience helped you with that?
Yeah, no, I've had PMA. I call it PMA, and as you know, on my Facebook page, I promote PMA every day. It's a positive mental attitude and our choices that we have to make. But I've had that for, since I was 17 years old, because I've gone through, when you went broke in 1988, you still had to have positive mental attitude to do something to survive that. And, because that was very depressing. I got super depressed when we did that.
Right.
Yeah. But no, PMA is the number one thing you can do for that, and figure out what that is. And the other thing is help other people. When you help other people, that lifts you up, lifts them up, but also lifts you up because you're making a difference in somebody else's life. And that's what my mission statement since 17 years old has been, to make a difference in the lives of other people through work I do. So
yeah, and you're obviously doing that through helping cities bring people into, small towns, bring people into their communities, and helping business owners make money, and helping someone find cancer that they wouldn't have otherwise figured out. There's definitely there's lots of positive things that you've been able to accomplish. Some of them are because of circumstances you didn't want, like who wants to go through dialysis, but I'm sure that person's grateful for that knowledge they didn't have.
Yeah. Well, one thing I believe is things happen for a reason, and sometimes we may never know, but sometimes we may know 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. I think part of this, going through all this, is the journey I've shared with everybody on Facebook. And I had a lady contact me 2 weeks ago that says, George, I'm going to have a biopsy on my bladder and find out if I have cancer or not. And I would never have shared that with anybody. And I would never have asked anybody to pray for me. But because of you and you sharing your journey, and I see how many people are praying for you, I'm going to put that on my Facebook page. Oh, and then she said, will you share that with your prayer warriors too for me? So, yeah. So I've gotten several messages like that just shows my journey has inspired. I had another one. We have a friend whose daughter is in China. She's been teaching English there for like 15 years. And she said, George, because of you, I went and got, I think it was she was having gallbladder problems and ended up having to have gallbladder surgery. But she said, I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't shared your journey of that. And I think that's one reason I'm going through this whole journey. I've had some other things that happened that I think in a year or two, I'm going to share how I survived that journey as well. So,
yeah. Wow. George, we really greatly appreciate you being here with us and sharing your journey, sharing the things about how small businesses can get served by the economic development councils in their area, and then sharing how people like yourself, which is an anomaly when people struggle, to be honest, to have a positive attitude and to look towards the future. And so I'm grateful to have you, and I thank you. Thank you for being here. And,
one last thing, John, for people who don't have positive mental attitude, start reading books, listening to tapes, listening to these guys every single day. Put something positive into your mind. You can go to Zig Ziglar, to Tony Robbins, to a host of people who are out there that take you through the steps of having a positive mindset. And every night, share something that you're grateful for. At least 3 things that you're grateful for the day. So thanks.
Yeah, I think you're right, George. And I try to surround myself with positive people as well. Just, because being around the right people tend to help you have the right attitude.
So one last thing, John. I encourage everybody to sign up to be an organ donor for if for God forbid something happens to you, you're able to change probably 30 to 50 lives if you're an organ donor. So
yeah. Thanks, George. Well, we appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you. I see you from time to time around town, and so I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, guys.
You bet.
I think it's good for our listeners and everybody else to know where to go to get these resources. I signed up for my local chamber, and after signing up, the chamber president was like, "Hey, let's have a call so I can tell you about these other, small offices or businesses that help, for bids. They help you get contracts. They help you land a local job, anything like that." But just the fact that if they don't tell you about it, then you're never gonna be able to use the resources.
No, and isn't that crazy how many people don't even know that it exists? Like, George and the team at the EDC here are fighting the good fight of trying to just let people know that there's resources, not just like they're free resources. So, well, here's the next thing as we're moving into the next segment of our show. Let's talk about our week, because you and I got to spend a couple days together in beautiful Arizona, and be able to learn some more. It's funny. This is probably there was some cybersecurity in this conference, but there's a lot more mindset and talk about mindset, finances, and then there were some other logistical things in this conference that we were at this week. So for those of you who don't know, Emilio, we're in the same industry, so we're managed service providers, and so we went to Arizona and spent 3 days at a conference, part of our mutual coaching program that we both use, and got to meet some really cool people like Mike Michalowicz, who writes the book Profit First, which for us has been transforming in how we do money in our business. And then Garrett Gunderson, who I took a lot of notes. I actually took more notes with Garrett Gunderson than I did with Mike Michalowicz, which surprised me. I think it's because Mike actually had a handout, and I just filled out the handout the whole time. But I had a lot of notes and things that I really thought about. And so I figured we'd just take a few minutes and talk about some takeaways from this week, if you have any specific that popped in.
I got several. Specifically Profit First. I mean, he's been to one of the other shows that I was at. I know a lot of our other colleagues in our program have done it. Somebody made a comment that said, well, you got into your business to have financial freedom and to have more time, but have you actually been getting any of that? Or something along those lines. And it clicked, and I was like, wow, we keep working more, we keep wanting more, but the reason that we started the business for is in how we're running the business right now. So that was one of my biggest takeaways.
Yeah. I think, for me, when it talks with, starting out with Mike Michalowicz's talk, he really just listening to that, because we're already doing Profit First, but my wife and I were chatting online during the whole time, and just going kind of over the notes and everything that we were listening to, and just talking about, oh, we could do this better, we can do this. So for us, it was really a revitalization. What's the word I'm looking for? We were just rethinking through, where could we be better, where could we process a little bit different, and so for us it was just more of a refresher. think where I got, other than just some of the small business things that Mike McAllowitz brought up and some of the things that he said, I think for me, I was so excited to see Mike McAllowitz like a fanboy. But, you know,
It was my favorite moment.
That, yeah, it was like, that's why I went to Arizona to a certain extent. But I got so much out of just some thoughts that Garrett Gunderson talked about. And I think one of the things that really started to kind of permeate my thought process is my misconceptions on wealth. I think this was a powerful statement. Some of the things that Garrett talked about, when he talked about really, we spend a lot of time thinking about what's in our bank account and not as much time thinking about our time and how much we spend with our family, or, you know, what are the things that really make our lives, you know, great in a sense. And so he said a couple of things that really made me think. So one of the things he said, financial freedom is when money is not the primary reason you do or do not do something.
That was a good one.
How often do I personally spend a bunch of time doing things because of money, you know, basic money decisions, and I make these decisions based on, you know, how much money's in the bank, not based on whether it's wise or whether, you know, it could make me money back or whatnot. But you know, it's funny how much money drives things. And he also said the other thing that was interesting is that the risk is not in the investment, it's in the investor.
That was a big one.
Like another one. I mean, just so much good stuff. And I think it was funny. George asked me, I was telling him a little bit about this, and he asked me, well, what are you doing to take from that conference and utilize what you learned? And it was really fascinating. It's funny that George is not here anymore, but I told him the way I'm doing it is I have some 3 goals for my business, my personal this year. And I'm looking for the 3 things from this week that I can apply to those 3 goals. Or is there anything I learned that applies to how I can do my day-to-day better than I did before? And so, you know, I really I'm taking my time. I'm going to go through my notes and whatnot for this week and start to look at, okay, what did I learn that can inform how I do things moving forward? How about you? Was there anything action items that you were looking at for that you're going to do this week that came out of this last week?
My first one is to start dabbling with the profit first, see how it's going to fit in. Actually finalizing my taxes, business and personal this week, and then dabbling into the profit first. Read the book, of course.
Yeah,
that's the main one. You know what happens if you leave? Every time I leave the conference, I come with like 10 things I want to do, and then it's 10 things too much, so I don't. So I think I'm gonna stick with just 2. The first one's gonna be the profit first.
Yeah.
The second one is going to be just keep doing what I've been doing of showing up to, you know, in-person networking and keeping that going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I shouldn't get bad results. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think really some of what I'm looking at doing is just applying, like we're going to make some changes in our profit first strategy as well, and really look through that. And I think the other thing that we're going to focus in on is just some other administrative things from some of the other sessions. We have a really good session on contracts and some other thing. And then I'm going to look at one of the things I have a newborn. So just looking at, so when you talk about like just the idea of wealth is not money in your account, but it's like how you're, he said something like, wealth is a byproduct of a life well lived. And so one of the things that I'm focused on just coming back from this conference was, how do I just take time to focus in on my family and also focus in on our business and zone in and see how we can grow and how we can help other people around us grow and grow this thing up, and then also just live life in a way that is enjoyable with our families. And so really good conference. I think we're going to have to, maybe we should we'll maybe create another episode where we just sit down and hammer out some of these things. And maybe one day Mike Michalowicz will come on our podcast. That's my goal.
That's when we made it.
That's how we know we made it. Mike Michalowicz shows up on the Business and Bites podcast. So, well, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to cover today? I know there was a couple of things that happened while we were gone. There was something that had to do with a 0-day Microsoft thing that I saw. I put it in one of our groups together.
Was it the Outlook, the 0-day bug?
No, there was another one that was some people found a way to use Defender. It was something to do with Defender. But I gotta remember where that article was at. But well, here's the thing, folks. Like, the reality is that there's a lot of crap happening right now.
I got one because
I
was reading some stuff earlier, and the tip was simple. The tip was slow down. When you're working on your computer, when you're reading emails, when you're clicking on links, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
What is this link? Was I expecting an email from this person? Was I expecting an attachment from this person? Before just, we're always going 1,000 miles per hour. We're always opening up the next email, clicking on the next link. Just slow down. Think about, what's the next thing you're going to click on? What's the next thing you're going to open? And take that into consideration.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part of it is there's some really simple things people can do, like run your mouse over links before you click on them. Like, that tells you really quickly if somebody says they're from Facebook or they're from any other, organization that has a domain, and you run your mouse over a link and it's not going to that domain, don't click on it. Like, it should be really easy, but most people just randomly click on stuff and then they get compromised. I have somebody that just called me this morning who lost his access to his GoDaddy, probably because he clicked on a link and gave away his information. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where we all got to slow down and just watch what we're clicking on. And then if you're a business owner, get your employees to slow down and watch what they're clicking on, because that's going to make a really big difference.
No, definitely.
Absolutely.
Lockdown starting inside.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a wrap for today. We're going to go ahead and call it good. Great to have George here, and we've got another guest next week. Who's our guest next week? Because that's one, I think that's Cece, isn't it?
I'm not sure if we finalized, so let's confirm that.
Well, we got guests coming. That's the important, exciting.
Yeah.
So,
get it finalized, and then we'll post it on the Facebook.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Sorry we didn't get the intro out on Facebook earlier to tell you who was going to be here, but look forward to the next one. We'll see you guys soon.
All right. Bye, guys.